Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm a financial mediator and business valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Mark Howley, and we're going to talk about the biggest challenges when scaling a business. And he's a financial strategist, a CEO who has sold his business, but also he has advice for owners who want to scale and eventually sell. So welcome, Mark. You also have your own podcast that we shouldn't ignore that. Woo, woo, woo. The Mark Howley Show. And so we have actually done a prior podcast just kind of talking really to the business owner and just saying, hey, you know, there are some big challenges when you are going to scale your business, which most businesses, I think, and owners are always like, let me make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And from the valuation side, I've never met an owner that I have told him a value of his business that was too high, right? So they all have this kind of pie in the sky dream of how much they're going to grow their company. I don't think they always think about selling it. But I know that we've talked about you should kind of grow it with a sale in mind. So a lot of today, we're going to talk about like challenges of scaling, challenges of getting prep for sale. And maybe the sale process shouldn't be as secretive as it has in the past. And you should be sort of not broadcasting, but sort of like ready to sell if the opportunity comes. But Mark, welcome. How are you? How's it going?
I'm doing well. You know, it is interesting that you say that, because I think that one of the biggest challenges the reason you run a business is to make money. Okay. Now, I always felt like, in a way, it's kind of like, oh, that's like a greedy comment, or somehow that's not in vogue, that I'm supposed to say I run it for some social reason or some inherent reason that's outside of financial gain. Well, let's stop kidding ourselves. We're here to make money. Now, that's assuming you're not a charitable organization or something to that effect. But everybody at your company, most of them at the end of the year say, gee, can I have a raise? Or everybody sits around and says, wow, we should get more baseball hats, or, we should be at more trade shows, all this sort of things. Well, they're just costs going up. And in one way or another, the old A is revenue, B is costs, C is profit. It's not a real hard thing to figure out. If A stays the same and B goes up, C goes down. And ultimately, if that C keeps going down, well, you're going to be broke. And now you're not going to be a business owner. So I think first and foremost is to just accept that you're there to make money. And most of us, nothing wrong with that. I don't mind a new car, within reason. I don't want to be, I don't want a bunch of people working for me who are paupers and horrible. But no, this is a market you're in. Employees cost a certain amount. Buildings, a rent cost a certain amount. Well, you cost a certain amount to have if somebody wants it. And that's just that. And if you lose sight of that, or don't know that when you start a business, you're starting off wobbly, because what the hell are you doing this for? And I don't think there's many who embark on something as an entrepreneur, or even as just an individual trying to do something that doesn't, in their brain, they want to make money. But can they just, now let's run the business that way?
Yeah. And most of them are following their passion. Most of them are doing something that there's a pain point in the industry, and they've created something that's maybe a better version. But right now we're hitting this tech boom, right? And we have AI, we have ChatGPT, we have everybody concerned that this is going to take their business. When the reality is, like, if I look at my business, I attract, I do not chase, right? That's just, so I want to be the beacon that everybody's like, oh, wow, she knows how to do these things. She knows how to do business valuations or negotiate. I'm going to come to her. Whereas one of the things that I think is a challenge for a business owner is actually chasing all of these things. So you do something really well, and now your profit margin starts to go down a little bit, right? Because you got more competition, or you got tariffs going into play, right? So how do we get out of that mentality of chasing the next best thing, as opposed to looking internally and saying, okay, how can I do better? Because if it's ABC, if it's revenue, if it's expenses, and it's profitability, then you can either grow the revenue, reduce the expenses, or look at other profitable lines that are complementary. But what do you think is one of the biggest challenges that business owners are facing when they're scaling, right? We're just like grow, 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 grow. Are they chasing things, or are they really looking internal? Like, what do you think they should be doing?
That's a good question. I think first off, you can delude yourself into thinking that there's a lot of different avenues out there, that you think, oh gosh, I'm let's say I'm Mark, and in my business I sold bags. Now, okay, bags. There might be there's a skrillion bags out there. So if I were to sell, in my instance, we're selling coffee bags. If all of a sudden I say, man, I'm going to sell cheese bags. I could sell cheese bags, or, I'm going to sell popcorn bags, whatever it may be. Do you realize that there's a lot of people who've been selling cheese bags for a long time? They're not just waiting for you to show up and say, oh God, thank God Mark showed up and now we have cheese bags. No. So everywhere you think you can go is yet another battlefield. And so you can't carry on multiple battles when you're small. And you also can't be investing money in fighting all these different battles when which one is making you the money? I think it's the hardest thing about business is every day you walk outside, you see a million things that you think to yourself, oh my gosh, if I did that, look at all the money I could make. Well, yeah, no crap, but you don't do that. So when you're sitting there thinking, how do I scale? First off, study what you think you can scale. You want to grow your business, let's say in a new market, that's going to cost money, right? So you're going to spend $100 trying to get into whatever market A. That's $100 is coming out of something. And it should be a calculated investment. You may be wrong, but it shouldn't be just on a whim or on a sense of excitement. Excitement will burn out real fast if you start losing money. Then you just become not making money. Now you're playing cold. Now you're playing scared. You're not playing controlled.
Well, and you're still like a scarcity mindset that you're like, okay, well, what if I don't make these sales? Like, what if I stop, this distributor stops working with me? But in business, I have tried to not be a commodity, right? I have tried to create something that is unique. Like you could take Hermes, right? They make these beautiful Birkin bags and Constance, and I watch these videos on TikTok. But the reality is it's been exposed that these bags are made in, China or foreign countries for far cheaper, right? You can get the exact bag that you're paying $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 for could be made for a couple $100s. Yet Hermes doubled down on this exclusivity, right? You can't just go in and buy certain bags. You have to be given the opportunity to buy the bag. And people wait in line.
The honor of.
The honor, right? And so in my mind, how, should we be striving to be like the best, or should we be striving to be the best in a narrow niche? Or does it matter if you figure out like how you can sell other bags? Is it just a profit margin? Because I think that's a hard piece to try to figure out. Like, am I going to be the most unique version that you can't find anywhere else? Or am I one of them and I have to be unique in that space? Like, how did you figure that out in your business?
Well, I wasn't a genius. I didn't come into the world and say, gee, I'm going to start making people drink coffee. You know, they were drinking it when I showed up for a long time. I happened to get a job in a company at the start was that sold to the big guys, right? Starbucks coffee, and I'm using my example. They sold to Pete's Coffee. That, you know, you go name the big brands, they sold out there. But there was an avenue through a small company in Seattle that was very small that was selling into smaller coffee companies. Now, it's not like I was a genius and I said, oh my gosh, the gourmet coffee's taking off. That had already been going on. But what happened was when I got to where I ultimately bought, owned, and sold a business over, by the way, 20, 25 years, what I came to the realization was that we were good at selling small coffee companies. And you would spend enormous amounts of time walking through the shelf and going like, oh my God, I could get this. Oh my God, I could get that. But the problem was within that little tiny segment of specialty coffee, there was a battlefield. I couldn't, if I went outside of it, I would die. And I knew it. I knew that you couldn't play where the big guys were playing because I just am not a big guy. Mm-hmm. My business. So kind of right size your head. First off, what are you? And not only that, you have to have some focus. You look at these people who are successful. Look at the Hermes or whatever. I don't even know the name of the place, but whatever, the one that all the, you name it, even Mercedes-Benz, name the premium product. They're normally not trying to get far away. When they get far away, they may be using their brand to extend, or they get a whole new brand. They change the company. Yeah. So I didn't have the bandwidth to change the company. So what do I have to do? I have to burrow into one further and try to become more of what you're saying, a premium within it. Or maybe you make the decision. I'm not saying you're right or wrong. Maybe you become the low-cost supplier.
Right.
That's what you chose to do. You say, I'm going to be the guy that's inexpensive, or girl that's inexpensive. Okay, well, that's what you are. Well, then you're going to play with the people who are inexpensive. That's a strategy. But you shouldn't let that, you need to figure out, what are you? Yeah. And just what are you at the very core? Be what you are. You are not a Fortune 500 company that can sell at a level that the company that previously employed me. I'm not. I don't have the people. I don't have the money. I don't have the reach. Why am I going to go play there? I'll lose.
Well, and I think defining what you do well, a lot of times you can even enter a market and be a lower cost. Like you can use cost to enter a market. And like, if I know everyone in business valuations is charging a $10,000 retainer and I come in and charge a $5,000 retainer, I'm going to win every way till Sunday, right? And then eventually word of mouth or something starts to make me into a premium product. But recently I'm hopefully if this is actually written by somebody that somebody will let us know, but I watched online, because in selling things online, there's an idea that you focus on one target market, one audience, one pain point, one product for 1 year, right? And there was some other, I think there was 5 of them. And so that to me kind of resonated in the fact of what you're saying is, what do you do really well all the time? And is that a market that you could expand upon? How do you do better? Like, is it about marketing? Is it about, proof of concept or, people talking about it? But how do you start to scale if you're not as well known, but maybe you have some connections? Because like, it doesn't have to be hard, but you're going to have to make some connections in order to make it so that you're not literally knocking on their door and asking to come in.
No, well, you have to. Yeah, I knew a guy. Again, I keep referencing coffee because I spent so much time in it. But actually, specialty foods was one of the big, especially, effectively go across the product line. Well, let me answer your first question before I
Yeah.
go on, because I can answer this in two phases. But I heard one person say to me, I started my business, and what I figured was I needed to get 300 people who loved me. I needed to get 300 people who thought I was awesome. If I could get 300, this happened to be in Kansas City. If I could get 300 that ran around and just said great stuff about me, then I could explode. And I think that when you start something, you have to build a champion base, right? So who are the people that love you? And if you get, let's say you're out there, you're a new person, whatever you're doing, and you get 15, a small amount, it doesn't have to be huge. You keep your head on right. Okay, let's say it's 100 people. I got 100 people. Make them love you. Focus on them. What are they? Find out everything you can about them. Why did they buy your stuff? And will they, because if people love something, they'll tell other people. They'll be at dinner, they'll be at things, it'll come up. And if they love you, they'll say it. So I think one thing to realize is focus on what, like if I would say that 1 year principle, which I think in a lot of markets is probably a little short of reality. Things take time.
Yeah.
And you talked about, at one point we talked about, cash flow, all those sort of things. The biggest reason for a small company to fail is because they run out of money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it. So how do you keep yourself right sized and get that little base of people that like you? Don't come in hiring 10 people. You're wasting money. So at the beginning, where can you find that pocket? Now, then you can expand off of that pocket. But first off, get the people who love you. I'm sure in your business, Melissa, you have people that love what you do. And I'm betting money that they're talking to other people and they'll say, oh my gosh, work with Melissa. She's just great.
Yeah.
How else do you grow a business? Because your product and mine, I wouldn't call them commodities, but there's no shortage of people that do what you do and I do, or say they do.
Right.
Well, how do you separate, my dad used to say the fly shit from the pepper. You got to sit there and try and pick all the little pieces out. How do you separate it? You can't, and so you have to create something. So I hope that answers your question. I hope I didn't wander.
No, because it's kind of like we talk a lot in our business, like an 80-20 rule, which is 80% of the time we need to be servicing the clients that are, like you said, our biggest cheerleaders. We got these things. And I think as a business owner, we get distracted by the 20% where we're, like going after new business. We're going after new people, new purchasers. And I think that there's something to be said about doing, like having systems in place that make sure that you're handling your current business. But, how do we get the money? Like, were you afraid to get loans? Because I see a lot of business owners that are like, I'm just going to bootstrap it. I'm just going to, figure it out, when maybe if you got a loan, you could hire people or you could get a marketing budget. Like, where do you think there's the line of I go and get a line of credit or I get debt, or should I just be continuing to kind of, fumble along until it hits?
Well, I think I've said this to a lot. There's good, I believe personally, there's good debt and bad debt. If you're going to use debt, it should be a calculated use. I'm going to buy $100. I'm going to borrow $100 from Joe. Is Joe's? So I'm asking Joe to give me $100, right? Now, why is Joe giving me $100? Because Joe could put that $100 in a bank. He could put it anywhere, but he's giving it to you because he thinks that he's going to get more money than what he could get in some other place. So if you're going to use that money, well, it's a calculated guess. Everybody knows when they're lending money to an individual, there's a higher likelihood they won't get it back. So now you're going to, that's just a reality. You're a small entity. So the question becomes, what are you going to do with that money? Now you make a calculated guess. it isn't going to be because I want to buy your stupid dad. I'm going to get myself a prettier office. I'm going to give, let's say I'm going to give everybody at the company a raise. I'm going to, improve all these frills. But if the answer is I'm going to borrow $100 because I think I can get from A to B with it. Now, the hunch, you might be wrong. That is just, you do all your homework and maybe you're wrong. But that is at least a reason to go out and borrow money because you think it's a good thing to do. You think it has a practical advantage. How you use that money, in my opinion, is to some extent is the decision between a good businessman or a good businesswoman. Was it a calculated use or was it just allowing overhead to tumble up on you? And you didn't take the time to manage that because overhead will chew you up. Everybody thinks they need another person. Maybe you don't need another person. Maybe what you need is money to do a calculate. Maybe you need to advertise somewhere else because that advertisement is going to drive you better than having somebody sit in your office next to you who's only working half the time, but it makes you feel better. So I think that's the fine line for a small business owner is at some point or another, you're probably going to need more money. Is it for a good reason or a bad reason? Did you just let your costs pile up without even giving thought to the fact that the extra $50, you want $75 back eventually?
Right.
Or can you draw those lines in your mind? Again, A minus B equals C. Sooner or later, the answers are going to come in. And if the answer is C just keeps plummeting, you got a problem. If you're going to borrow money and it feels good, well, now you got a loan sitting on your books, and it's a cost. It's a cost.
And I think that there are different problems at different phases because $1 million in revenue is kind of your first bogey as a business owner. Like, do you get above 1 million? Now, once you get above 1 million, the next pivot point, in my opinion, is 10 million. So there's a lot of difference between $1 million business and a $10 million business.
Huge.
But one of the things that I think that we have to consider is hiring people. And like, what if I'm the like people just love me, right? I don't need to be doing everything. Maybe I need to be out there doing more. So at what point do I start to hire some other management? Because we know when you go to sell your business, you need a management team in place. If you're the only one, like we just talked to a business owner and he was like, I'm the best. I do all of this, the most amazing. No one can do it any better. And I'm like, hey guys, this is a bad sign.
Pardon me, I thought I had this thing off.
You're fine. Like this is a bad sign because we don't have his replacement in there. So when you're scaling between the 1 and 10 million, what do you think? Should we be focused on, other people, hiring some management? Where should we put our focus on so that we can get to that $10 million level? Because you're going to have a lot more opportunities to sell your company when you're at a 10 million or you're above $1 million EBITDA, right? And so you gotta move it into that direction. What do you think is the stumbling blocks, or do you think are the areas that somebody should focus on when they're trying to get to that level?
Well, first off, I think I was thinking about this quite a bit, and you can go out and get consultants and all that. And I think when you're smaller, don't be misled that a lot of times there are things that are practical you can do if you can stop running around like a chicken without a head and say, okay, like here's one thing. I get an order. Now we can say, what's the sales process or what's the ordering process? What's my operational process? It sounds so complex. Oh my gosh, what's the process? Let's just pretend you're sitting at your desk and you go, Joe says, I want to buy, you get an order. I got 1,000 marbles, right? Oh my God, they want to buy 1,000. Where's that go next? I'm at my desk. I go, oh my gosh, I want 1,000. The guy wants 1,000 marbles. Now, do I jump out and run into the warehouse and get the 1,000 marbles off the shelf and put them in a box and go to call UPS and all that sort of stuff? Well, you'd say, well, if that's happening, number one, That's a real waste of time. You just now have you who's making boy, that surely seems like a bad use of an asset that you're running out there. Now, then all of a sudden, you got to bill whoever it is for bought the marbles. Okay, who writes the invoice? I mean, who writes the invoice? Who makes sure the invoice gets paid? Now, that's pretty simple stuff. In a smaller business, you can usually write those things down. Now, if you're saying to yourself, but I'm the main salesperson, I'm the one who's getting the marble orders, and I want to get more marbles. Okay, you want to get more marbles. Well, then who's going to be the one who who's going to be the one who would then, when you get that order, yeah, sure, I'll get you 1,000 marbles. Okay, who's the one who's going to get the one and write down that they got a purchase order? Who's going to pushing the skill set down? Mm-hmm. It may only be when you start one extra person. I just need somebody that even if I'm on the road, I call and I say, Doug, I got an order for 1,000 marbles. Write it up, get it done. Now Doug runs out to the warehouse. Doug does all that stuff. And you're out there working the business. Well, now we can carry this on. Now, Doug, who's taking it, says, oh my God, Mark, I can't get all these marble orders in.
Right.
What's the roadblock? I keep having to run out to the warehouse to get stuff done. Oh, well, if you spent your time only on the phone taking marble orders, could we get a guy in the warehouse? Mm-hmm. And I tried not to grow until I hit those pain points. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, I didn't buy ahead. A lot of small businesses will say, oh, if I get this person, then it will happen. I was always of the business that let's get it in. Let's reach almost a breaking point before I say, now I'm going to have to get somebody else. And that takes at least roughly some sketching of how that happens. Like, I got a sale, boom, boom, boom. It went somewhere. Right. Before it became money in your pocket from the time you got the order, unless you're going on Visa or like even that, you got to keep an eye on. But, you know, because then you have fees on those things. But anyway, the point being is this simple checklist of how does stuff get done? Because what are you hiring somebody for?
Right.
You have to write a job description.
A lot of times you're hiring somebody for the things that are painful for you to do. But now that we have like ChatGPT, we have Gemini, we have, you know, all of these resources to kind of do the administrative things, I think that people are going to move towards hiring kind of the middle leadership and things like that. But realistically, people, if you're going to eventually sell your company, you need to replace yourself as not as soon as possible, but at some point it's going to get to the stage and it's almost going to be at the most fun point, right? Yep. Like everything is booming, everything is going great. And you're like, my leadership is amazing. Like we're going to, but yet at that point you have to start saying, okay, who's my next in line? Because I mean, this is where it becomes critical that you need to plan like if you get to 5 million in revenue or even 10 million in revenue, you need to take a month off. And I don't mean like you need to take a month off because you're probably doing so good. You need to take a month off because if you are not aware of all of the things that will go wrong if you step away for a month, like no communications, right? You're in a, you know, like on Mount
Bali.
Everest.
I'm hanging out in Bali,
right?
You know,
let's go to Bali, right?
Yeah.
You're in Bali. You can't talk to anybody. That's where it becomes critical. And you almost have to have it be a fake situation. Like step back and just be like, hey, you know, like take a internal vacation where you're not answering the calls, you're not responding back, you're not making the sales calls. Who else can step in and do that? Or where does it fall apart? Because you might think that you're like a very important piece of it, but it may be because you're not looking around at the people around you and you're not giving them leadership. You know, leadership, in my opinion, is given by the main CEO. And a lot of times they won't give it to anybody else. They're like, no, I'm the main person.
Yeah. You can get Here's a question I ask is, if you have a family, okay, and all of a sudden you drop dead, what value did that family get from your effort? If in the end, the wife and children say, oh my gosh, dad had this business and it's worth a bunch of money. Now it's just a thing sitting there. You're not there anymore. Mm-hmm. And if everybody comes in to buy it and they go, well, we'd love to buy it, but Susie's, well, in this case, a dad, we'll say Susie, who cares? Whatever, Susie, Joe, I don't know. I'm going to pretend that a dad with 5 kids is male. This is just going to be my insight as a 65-year-old man. Yeah. But the point is, what's there? And if the answer is nothing, that your wife and children come in and say, there's nothing to sell because dad's gone. Well, when you're running a small business, you want to try and create a structure that is an asset without you. Now, that takes a long time, but you should be thinking about that. In the analogy I used before, so the person who is now you're giving these orders to, well, that person now, let's pretend that's your operations manager, for lack of a better term. Well, if I were to look at that business, I'd say, well, who is my who is my production manager? Well, it sounds like a fancy word, but the production manager is the person that's getting stuff out of the warehouse. So if I started to say, okay, roughly, let's sketch out this little business. I'm here and I'm real important, right? I had, over here, I have a little operations manager. Well, that operations manager wants to make sure the bills get paid. But in the meantime, that order has to go over here to the production manager. Now, that really is just a dude in a warehouse.
Right.
But you're starting to create the framework of a business. And that is a little chart where things are, the water's flowing down and it's going to other people. That may be a mirage at the moment, because when people are new in business, the hardest thing bar none is to decentralize and give things away. Most small businesses, I have people who have worked for me. I have people I know who they do it all. It feels great. It's a buzz. And a lot of people who run a small business, they love the buzz. They're chasing the buzz as much as they are the money. It's the emotion. But you're fooling yourself. Your buzz is on the sense of control, but you don't have control.
Right.
There's no control. It's just like a one-arm paper hanger.
Well,
that doesn't have value.
And I think partnerships, joint ventures, I think are all changing because they have to be mutually beneficial for somebody to enter into it. And so you're getting to the point where, you almost have to have some blind faith, because we talk about how, other generations are not as hard workers they want balance in their life and all of those things. But the reality is, you need to have blind faith and trust in the people that you start to align with. It's not about just hiring somebody that clocks those orders. It's about hiring somebody that also has the personality to deal with a customer who gets frustrated and they solve it. And they're like, oh my gosh, Betty solved it. And she was amazing. And Betty didn't need to come back to me 8 times to be like, is that okay if I offer that?
She's psyched. You gave that person a sense of ownership, just like you wanted. And I think I have frequently told people, you're afraid to give away a responsibility. You think that person's going to mess up. Okay. How are you ever going to know if that person's any good if you stare over their back? You do 2 things when you stare over the back. First off, you don't free yourself up at all. And in a way, you're discrediting the person. Imagine if you're doing something and somebody's standing over your back the whole time, like a teacher. Are you doing the math right? Are you doing the math right? Well, what you end up saying is, I don't want to do the math. You're standing there, you do the math.
Yeah.
Or you do the marble order. I don't want to do it, because why do it? You're just going to bitch at me the whole time I'm doing it. I didn't learn anything. People desperately want two things, and you don't realize this when you're an owner until you start really. They want your recognition. They work for you. You're the boss. Many people, that's one of the sole things in their life, is to know that they have value to somebody else. Secondly, and that they can solve things. They want to solve them. Yeah. Their brain's probably different than yours, but they're going to get to the same thing. And if you give something to somebody, I always say, you want to know if somebody's good at what they do? Give it to them and walk away. You will know so fast if they're no good. I mean, I had it happen to me once where I had a sales guy who was working for me. We had an account. I thought, oh God, I can't possibly let him have this. It's a nightmare. But because of other things I had to do, I realized I'm just going to let him do it. I have to let him do it. It has to be done. And I bit my tongue not to jump in a few times. The bottom line is we lost the business. What did I get out of that? Probably one of the best salesmen ever worked for me. Because he was mortified. He was mortified. And we sat down and said, so I just was like, dude, this sucks. I mean, it sucks, but we could survive. I didn't give him the biggest account. We'll survive. But that person, because they were able to make the mistake on their own, I learned was a good person.
Right.
And I think a lot of small business owners, they're just so afraid to do that.
Right.
Then you're not giving that person any value. And that's what they want. What is it? They say that I once read this, like 80% of the people will leave a company for non-compensation reasons.
Yeah.
I was a number. Nobody gave me a chance to do what I wanted to do. I didn't participate in the ownership. My peer group sucked.
Yeah.
Meaning everybody
they didn't listen to me.
They didn't listen to me. All these things. It isn't many times with an employee. It isn't about the money. You think, give them another $5,000, they'll be happy.
Yeah.
No, give them responsibility.
Right. And let them have not only perceived control, but actual control. Like with this individual, one thing that people don't talk about is when you become successful, you're going to have to turn down bad business. And if you have people that are sourcing your business or, like in the pipeline, like kind of working the warm leads, they have to have that capability to distinguish that this is not a great client, right? They're already making me work too hard at the beginning. They're going to probably complain about it in the end.
Yep.
Like if they can't distinguish some of that, they're going to clock those dollars and they're going to get you those clients, but they're going to be horrible clients that you have to work twice as hard to please, and you will never please them, right? You're going to be issuing a refund. You're going to be on the phone or sending emails. Like, I think that one thing that a CEO can do is give it in a very visceral way. Like, hey, everyone, this is now, Johnny is now the lead for all things warehouse. Like, you will be talking to him directly before you would come to me. Like that has to be pushed in, but also like simple things like, like when I was working in corporate accounting, big accounting firms, like all the partners got to park up front, right? And I was like, I want to park up front. Like, this is so ridiculous. Like, even just having some way to show people that they are special in a visceral way. Like, if everybody gets an employee of the month kind of concept once a month, and Johnny got employee of the month, everybody knows it's a public accolade, right? It's a public appreciation. So yes, sending the bonus or the flowers or the treats, that's great. But the public display of affection or power is a very important piece to getting people to then champion the business as you would, right?
Yeah, I think that most business owners, and I won't say all, most of them tend to be a pretty energized person. And for me, I used a term that I heard before. It's like walk around management. And that was, I would do a lot of just walking around and thanking somebody. You don't have to sit there and go, oh, you're the best employee. No, hey, thanks for the work yesterday. I appreciate it. And then at the same time, offering some hellos to the others. So you're not just saying, oh, I only talk to Joe or Susie because she's good. All the rest of you, you're a bunch of shit. No, you're trying to spread it around. And that's a good way to do it. The other thing that I've learned is that when somebody was a manager working for me, and always people are going to try and go around it, right? It's just common. They're going to come around it. They're going to say somehow or another, if you're a smaller business, they're going to come in and say, hey, Mark, I was talking to Joe about, how we should put these boxes out or whatever it may be. And I think it's very important for you to say, what did Joe say? Okay, Joe said, blah, 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 blah. And you support Joe.
Yeah.
You don't say, you're right. Let me call Joe.
Yeah.
Well, now you just chop Joe's legs out. What you should do, I always said is, well, you're not going to get a lot different answer out of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and that, what are you saying? It's not the person you're talking to. Mm-hmm. It's the person out there who could potentially you be chopping their legs out.
Yeah. Well,
and that's hard to do because somebody will come into your office and say something where you're like, yeah, that's pretty dumb. Joe shouldn't do that.
Right.
But you have to kind of bite your tongue and say, let me think about that.
Right. But I think because I'm a mediator, I know that people do not like confrontation. So they're more likely to complain, and you have to start to listen. Like, are they complaining about the same person, right? Do you have a toxic person in there that needs to have a conversation? But in my mind, it's either having a consistent way that everybody can air their grievances in a more, a forum where Joe actually hears what the issues are. And maybe Joe's like, oh, I thought I was communicating really well, but obviously I'm being rude or condescending or things like that. In my mind, like, I think that this will break some people's brains, but like to actually have like a bitch session, once a month where you get together, you bring in lunch and everybody puts their issues on little pieces of paper and puts them in the thing. And you start reading it out like, hey, we got an issue. Johnny seems like really condescending. Hey, Johnny, let's talk about this. Like, do you feel like you're like, because if you don't introduce a way to deal with conflict, most people do not want to have those hard discussions.
No, why have them? Here's the only thing that I would say about the box idea.
Yeah.
Is that people won't tell the truth because they're going to be in a room. Mm-hmm. So you have a problem. Like for me, if somebody were to say to me, hey, Mark, let's go in and have a bitch session when I was working for somebody and the sales manager's there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Just Mark Howley. I walk into that meeting and I think, I don't want to be fired when I leave this meeting. And if I bitch the sales manager, many times that sales manager is a relatively creative person. And this is just me. They're going to find out it was me. Mm-hmm. So when you have these group meetings, there's all this dynamic going on in there. And is anybody going to be honest?
Right.
Right. So one of the things I used was, if you have somebody who's toxic, who I like to call just an asshole, right? We got an asshole. My bet is you sniff the asshole before people start telling you. This is just me. You kind of realize, Joe, that guy in the warehouse is a little bit of an asshole. And how did you find that out? There's a buzz in the air.
Right.
Why are 3 people complaining about Joe? Only Joe. Mm-hmm. And you start to realize now maybe you individually, or maybe with one of them, you just start to interact. And then you start realizing maybe I need to talk to Joe.
Yeah.
Now, only because I like to keep the complainer protected a little bit, because don't kid yourself. If Joe hears that somebody's complaining, they say, oh, it's against the law on human resources. Yes, it is against the law. Joe is protecting Joe's job.
Right. Right.
That's reality.
Right.
And so really in a smaller business, there's a lot of people who are nipping at each other's throat for reasons you don't know.
Right.
But if 3 of the 4 people working for you all say, that Joe's an asshole.
Right.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And if it starts to rumble enough that it starts to become dysfunctional.
Right.
Well, how do you solve that? Well, then sometimes you have to have a person in there who's really the one who's in conflict and say, hey, man, we got to figure this out. Mm-hmm. And I used to say this to a lot of my employees. Listen, I have 5 kids, okay? And there's 3 little ones under 5 years old downstairs. They're all arguing. I'm the boss. I run downstairs. I don't know what was going on downstairs. I don't know who started what. But when I come downstairs, one of them is going to be in their bedroom. Maybe I got the right one. Maybe I got the wrong one. I don't know. But somebody's going in their bedroom. Now, if the 3 of you are going to be in a fight and you want me to come rolling in, not knowing all the underlying things going on, and pick somebody, I'll do it. But I could probably be wrong.
Right.
So now, do you want to talk about it together? And then I'll come in and you tell me what's right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because unfortunately, as the owner or boss of the company, if it's dysfunctional, I have to make it functional.
Right. Well, and if a buyer comes in, right, they're going to potentially want to talk to your people. And that's when your people are going to have some control, because they're going to just go batshit crazy and start talking about it. But let's say we get some management in place and we have some good, customers, we have sales, everything like that. And we get the knock at the door and somebody comes in and says, hey, Mark, I want to buy your business for a price that you can't even possibly imagine. What do you think would surprise business owners the most about the sale process, or surprised you in that process that you would want to talk about? Because that seems like this is great, like bird in the hand.
Right. First off, what do you say when they ask you that? First, don't say it's a good price right away.
Right. Be like, thanks, yes.
Yeah, don't be going, wow. Now's the time. Play poker. Shut up and stare. But all kidding aside, one thing they're going to do, and it is a big thing, is they're going to do what we refer to as, and I'm sure you know it, due diligence. And that is, are you what you represented? Like selling a house, they're going to want to go through, they're going to check the plumbing, they're going to see that the heater's not broken, they're going to tap on the walls and get all these different people in. Well, when they come into your business, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to come in and say, so if Mark's not here, I want to find out all the other stuff.
Right.
And the challenging things there are, what's your organization?
Yeah.
And can I go talk to person A, B, C? If you start saying in every time, well, I'll be in there with you. I'll be in there with you. Well, the buyer's going to realize, oh, so this person doesn't know anything. Mark's going to come in here and be the personality. He's going to be the knowledgeable.
Right.
You have to assume that you're going to leave the room. Yeah, here's my operation manager. I'm going to step out, and know in your heart that person knows what the hell they're talking about, because the person buying it, that's what they're looking for. What they're looking for is that they don't know. They're talking to that operation manager to find out, this guy really know how to do operations?
Right.
Or is he just a figurehead?
Yeah.
And that's going to go. The other things that happen, and this may be going a step beyond, but when you go into due diligence, let's say we'll go back to the marbles. You got a warehouse full of marbles. Do you have too many marbles?
Right.
I sell 100 marbles. How many marbles do you have in the back? 20,000. Why do you have 20,000 marbles? you know?
Or we don't know. We haven't counted the marbles in 5 years.
Exactly. How many marbles do you have? A lot. I mean, that's when people are going to start to dig in. And then they may say something like, so who's buying the marbles?
Yeah.
Well, that's me. Does anybody ever count them?
Right.
Or do you just buy them because you're excited about marbles?
Because you got a deal, right?
Because you got a deal. Oh, I can get 50,000 marbles for $1 a piece. Well, okay, so now you just gave away $50,000. Where is it? It's sitting in my warehouse.
Right.
And the person who comes in, and it's been a year that those marbles have been sitting out there, it's not $50,000 to them.
Right.
It's a bunch of marbles that aren't worth anything.
Right.
So, but what I'm getting at is that's what due diligence is.
Right.
People are going to go through and they're going to want to kick the tires. They're going to want to find out all these little nooks and crannies. Are there people there that can answer them?
Well, and due diligence sometimes includes like a quality of earnings. And so you're coming in, and again, you got the knock at the door that you answered. They say, hey, we want to give you $10 million for your company. And you're like, well, let me think about it. You're going to have to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then maybe we can talk turkey. Now you got to scramble and get some of this stuff. So you're like, hey, I think we have $500,000 of adjusted EBITDA, and we want the $10 million price. Now I come in and say, okay, $10 million seems like a great deal for $500,000 of cash flow. But then I look at the tax returns and you've only reported $100,000. So now you want somebody to pay $10 million for $100,000 cash flow. And I'm using this as what people would think is an exaggerated example, but it's not. Like, I don't think business owners are understanding that at the end of the day, they might come in and say, oh, I want to pay $10 million. Now their quality of earnings people come in, which is a big accounting firm. They're checking all of your numbers. They're making sure that the cash is actually coming in, that you're reporting it properly, right? They're digging in deeper. They might be like, hey, we noticed you really only make about $100,000. So we probably would pay about $1 million for that. And you're like, whoa, I make 500,000 because you add back my salary. And oh, by the way, we're running a lot of personal expenses through the.
Yeah, that's a killer. Okay, here's one thing. Let me ask. Oh, that's a killer. Okay, that's a good one.
Never heard that before.
No, it's not 100. It should be 300 if you take out my boat and my car and my house. Well, you know what? You got to enjoy that up until the point when you try and sell it.
Right.
Because you know what? What you reported, what you said was your earnings was 100. That's what they are. To now start saying to somebody, within reason, some things you can back out costs.
Right.
But you got the pleasure of that money coming your way. And that was great while you're running it. But realize at that time, you are not letting the value of the business go up. Sooner or later, that beautiful boathouse and all that stuff, they're going to figure it out. And they're going to say, but you chose to show the company only worth 100. That was your choice. That's the value. Now you can argue and say it's worth 200, but it ain't worth going to be. You can't, and you can't do that.
But if you get a bank, if it like, let's say the SBA, you're like, oh, I can go get the SBA loan. I can go get a bank loan. The bank is going to be looking at that. So for business owners, you got to start cleaning out your books. You got to start at least dropping it to a one category that is all of your perquisites.
Or at the bottom, you swipe it off and, and you pay the proper taxes.
Yes.
It isn't. First off, I'll fall back here. If you're running a business, get a good accountant.
Yeah.
Okay. Get a good one. One that is, most business owners, myself included, don't know the intricacies of how to report an earnings.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Once again, separate the fly shit from the pepper. Okay. What's this business make without you and all your little frilly things that you suck out of it?
Right.
I used to do at the end of the year after taxes, what can I take off the business that's mine?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want to commingle it. Some people would be like, oh, run your daughter's tuition for college through the business. No, I could do that. But, why don't we just pay the piper? And at the end, pay for my college. It's a separate thing. That's Mark Howley.
Mm-hmm.
There's Mark Howley person, and then there's Mark Howley Inc.
Right.
Keep them separate. Because if you're playing over, it's going to all wash out.
And if you aren't keeping it separate, then it's a lifestyle business. Like,
yes,
you are just your own boss. You are having an entity that you can run your expenses to, because you can rent a Maserati and run that as a lease expense through your business. Perfectly fine. Or you can make other decisions. And the fact of the matter is, if you get closer to sale, or just in general, because a lot of people hire accountants that they just tell them what to do. They're like, oh, at the end of the day, I mean, I have several clients that will be like, oh, at the end of the day, this is how much I made. These are the expenses. And the accountant's just like, okay, checks the box, puts it in the tax return. And people are like, how could the tax return be wrong? Because the owner basically put together the financials for the tax return, and they included personal expenses. Like,
if you're gonna, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. Now you're getting me like kind of fired up here, because I've seen this so many times. Before you sell a company or you're planning on it, did you ever get a financial review? Not just a person coming in who is Harry, your friend who goes to the cocktail party with you, who sits down and says, Joe, what did you spend on this? You go, no. Have a third party come in. It'll cost you money.
Yeah.
A review for my company, a review cost, as I recall, about $12,000. Now that's a lot of money, maybe $15,000, right? An audit was about $35,000. Now I had to do audits when I had investors. They would say, no, send in the big guns, because we want to know, is there any bullshit going on? Mm-hmm. And when audits happen, all hell breaks loose. Mm-hmm. They're out there climbing through that warehouse. They're out there looking at every bill and oh my God, it's a nightmare. But if you're running it clean, it's good. A review is one step under that. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to sell your business and you say these books were given a review,
right?
And I don't know if that's the perfect term. It used to be called a review, but it's a third party look at how you run it.
Right.
And they will ask some difficult questions. Hey, Mark,
And it's usually an accounting firm that's not the one that's doing your taxes.
Yeah,
somebody else coming in to do this. And what it does is it kind of starts to rubber stamp your financials in a way that you are now, and again, this is, if you're getting between the 1 million to 10 million in revenue, you got to start making some of these changes. Like, you're not going to get a huge exit if you still have 10 million of revenue, but you operate like you're a solo practitioner, right? It's still going to be found out at the end of the day. And that's what I don't think people understand, is like, they're going to figure out the skeletons in the closet. And so take them out, put some makeup on them, and figure out if they are really detrimental to your business or not. But it's full disclosure. Whenever you go through the sale process, they're going to critique everything about you, about the building, about your operations, about your people, about your leadership, and your business. Your baby is going to get hyper critiqued. And so one way to do that is to start to hyper critique it yourself by getting the proper people to come in and tell you, hey, this looks really messed up. Like, half the time I'm coming in and saying, this inventory looks really odd compared to what you're selling. Do you really have $1 million in inventory? Like, when's the last time that you checked it? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, do you do like a physical count each year? And they're like, oh no, we haven't done that in like a decade. And I'm like, well, how do you know how much is in there?
That would only put me out.
And so I'm like, okay, well, that can't be the answer. A lot of times when they're even doing a business valuation, that's their first idea of what they're truly worth. I'm not typically having great conversations with people because they're like, I'm worth 10 million. And I'm coming in saying, so if we really look at your EBITDA, you're worth 700,000, right? And they're like, what?
I had that. Yeah. Small business owners. And I'm guilty of this, although I kept going out and having my accountants, I constantly got mine valued. I just did, because I just practically, maybe it's I just in my head always thought, how much money do I have?
Right.
I just was a panic. I'm panicked. I think the music's going to stop and I'm 40 and I have no money and I got kids. The music's going to stop. I spent my life, that's all I worried about. Oh my God, the music's going to stop. The music's going to stop. Right. And when it stops, do I have anything?
Right.
Or am I going back out and I'm an inside sales guy at some marble joint? That was my great fear. So what is it worth? And most people that you talk to are small business owners wildly overvalue their business, wildly, when asked on their own. And, we tried to buy a guy in our business and he showed me the numbers and I was like, it was literally like 3 times less than what he thought.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was just the fact.
And I think, like getting one every year makes total sense, but it's allowing yourself to have the reality check that you need to have so that because if a buyer comes in and they're like, okay, your price was 5 or 10 million that you were looking at, because maybe you have a broker, maybe you have all of this stuff. And they come in and they see literally $100,000 of profit, they're going to think that you're stupid. Like they're going to question whether you have an understanding of value of business or whatever. And quite frankly, I don't think you're going to realize how ridiculous you're going to sound, right? Because again, if you want a $10 million price on $100,000 of profit, then you better have patents. You better have a proprietary, like you have a secret Coca-Cola recipe that you're sitting on and you have 100 million in sales. You're just not quite making profit yet. Like that's a different scenario.
Yeah, that's a whole different beast.
When you come in, you're selling the stuff knowing that you don't have the profitability yet. You're not leading with profitability. You're leading with what is best about it. And I think we'll end it with like a question, like, how do I know if I'm sitting in my business, if I should be focused because technology's changing? I got to pivot. Like if you are listening to this and you think that your business, nothing's going to change in the next 5 years, you are sorely mistaken. You need to be pivoting right now in every business because of what's happening with ChatGPT and what's happening in the tech world. So let's say I'm at that pivot point. How do I determine let's exit, right? Or do I scale it back up? What are some factors that you would tell somebody to consider in trying to make that decision?
Well, first off, there is not a specific right answer. Okay. Yeah. We all know if it's the right answer after we make it, wow, I made the right, my business got sold 2 months before COVID. Okay. Now, did I plan that? No. Weirdly enough, COVID benefited the business because it was selling packaging that was all of a sudden everybody went retail. So everybody moved into the grocery store. Well, that's where our bags were. So somebody could argue, boy, Mark, you were dumb. You should have stuck around. Now, when I sold it, I thought, boy, Mark, aren't you smart? Because the shit had, look at how you missed the shit hitting the fan. So
Right.
it's all, I don't know whether you're right or wrong. But right now, if I were sitting there, I would be making a very close look at, if you're saying this $100, do you have margin and do you have a defined position?
Mm-hmm.
If you're scattershot at that point, in my opinion, multiple, you're shot all over the place, you haven't created a value. When somebody buys it, how do I sustain that money coming in?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have a thing that's of value? Because if it has value, theoretically, ChatGPT will find it.
Right.
Or these various ways they'll find you. But you can't manufacture value.
Yeah.
And but that's such a hard thing to do, because what's value? Value's in the eyes of the buyer.
Mm-hmm.
But the buyer's smart now. And I still think, in the end, in business, are you bringing a value to the end user that isn't easily replaceable?
Right. Right. And
you've added something beyond. You are bringing something that is more intangible than tangible.
Right.
To the business.
Even if we look at like dental practices or doctor practices or chiropractors or anybody even in the health space or any of these practitioners, I encourage them to look at, if I came into this space, what would it cost me to create a whole new place, to be your competitor? Because you're asking for them to pay $3 million where it would cost me $1 million to enter this space and maybe another $500,000 to ramp up and start to take your clients, right?
Yep.
So I have to realize, what am I buying in you that's going to, if the cost is 1.5 million and you want to sell for 3, where is that value proposition? So I like how you've said, what is your defined position or value offer is, and that is going to be, if it's a value offer good enough, then you scale it, right?
Yeah.
If people still want this, you keep on going. If the value offer is no longer like the things that people bought you for, now everybody's got organic packaging. Now everybody's got, whatever that's your competitor. Then you have to realize, do I still have something left to offer to go to market? Because going to market could be 6 to 12 months and you're kind of in this middle ground, right? Where
how about you think about this? Somebody comes in and says to you, I'll give you $1 million for your business. And right now you can get $100,000 out of it every year. So it'd take you 10 years to get $1 million.
Yes.
Okay. Is it going to be sustainable for 10 years?
Right.
Okay. Take the $1 million and you go, whew, now I don't have to worry about 10 years of making money. And, so I did that calculation. And what I came to the conclusion was, sell the damn thing.
Yeah.
And, and now the people who bought it, thankfully, but it would have taken me a lot of years to get what they said in value.
Yeah.
So what I think is look at it this way. Do you trust that in 5 years, your business will have generated more money than the amount of money that person said is going to give you now?
Yeah. And I would even say, look at the 5 years and try to understand, is your business continuing to go up?
Yeah.
Because if it's static or going to a decline, you're never going to get the money out of it that you wanted. Like we have to see a clear path up. And that's the hard part, is like, most of the time, that's the fun part. Like, you're going up, everything's going great. That's the best time to sell. And that's a hard kind of understanding, that you're going to get the most money because they're buying the hopes and dreams of the future. Right.
Yeah, they're buying, they call it the goodwill, which is like, what the hell's goodwill? I don't know what the hell it is. I think what goodwill is you made $100, you're going to make 120 next year. There's the goodwill, and it is just for anybody out there who's looking at buying and or selling. There's no clear-cut answer here.
Yeah.
People are buying and selling at the right and wrong prices all the time. That's why you bring somebody in who knows what the hell they're talking about. That's why you bring an accountant in who shows you what you're really worth.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's a little bit of a, it's a teeter-totter.
Yeah.
But like we
And all
talked
the
about,
big firms, like the accounting firms have gone through huge mergers, right? Like most of them are getting consolidated. They all had business or they all had business consultants. Always. Like they
yep,
always brought in a business. Like I'm going to tell you, if you're an accounting firm and you start seeing business consultants come, odds are they're going to sell. But
yeah,
anyway, like for the most part, you're not just sitting in a box trying to figure out what's best. That is a time to hire somebody that you think is going to help you make those decisions and walk through what does it mean to do some of these things. Because if you have to pivot, it may be a good time to exit out of the current business and then start something else
yes,
that would be
yeah,
more aligned with what you want to do right now.
yes. And we could talk about this another time.
Yes.
But once you make the decision that you're going to sell, then it's a whole new world.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world, and it's extremely emotional and time consuming.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very, very much so. And that's something I learned.
Yeah.
I learned through multiple. I was buying shares, but I had investors, I had a bank, I had all these different people, and each time you do each time you try and get rid of something off, by a shareholder, you go back through this conversation again.
Yeah.
And it's time consuming because once again, everybody wants to come in and see what you're doing. Everybody wants to read what you're doing, and it sucks up your time.
Yeah.
And it's during that time you can't run your business,
right?
Because you're trapped talking to people about what you're worth.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. So tell them a little bit about you and your podcast. If they want to reach out to you, what type of people are you interviewing? What are you guys talking about on your podcast?
Okay. Mine's a little bit different than yours in that the inception of mine was I've always been fascinated by why people do what they want to do and ultimately find some sort of a mission or goal. And the reason I came out with that was because I am not a believer that the next generation is a bunch of bums and lousy people, and don't want to work and da, 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 da. I think that these younger people are confused and overwhelmed by everything that we've been talking about today, ChatGPT, social media, all these things, and they're frozen. I think they're frozen. I think they see so many opportunities that they're afraid to pick any one. And what I have seen in my life between the 25 and 35-year-olds I have hired is there are great ones out there, but a lot of them are just flummoxed. And here's the other thing I always say, there are kids. So you're criticizing in a way yourself. We made them. We brought them up. So now maybe we have to help fixing them.
Yeah.
And I think other people who are a little older, maybe your age versus my age, who found a home. And what did they do? The bottom line is they put time in. And I don't know how to get around that. And that's what my goal is in my show. Entrepreneurs, musicians, people who've been to prison, people who've gotten through drug problems and they got to the other side. That's my goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's great because I do think that times are shifting, and I believe that everybody has the opportunity to make exponential wealth in any way that they see, but it's about chasing your passion. I think it's about understanding your skill set and how you are different and unique in this space, whatever space it is, right? It's really defining that as a more narrow term. And what we know is that it's going to be easier to scale and it's going to be easier to sell if you're really hyper-focused and you understand your strengths and you get other people involved that maybe fill out some of the weaknesses in your process. So this has been amazing.
Yeah, I'll say this.
Yeah.
You work from your brain, you sell from your gut. What you do in life has to come from your gut. The logical, if you try something just all logically, I don't think in business or in life for that matter, you're going to get anywhere. I feel like you have to be pulled this way rather than this way in life. And hopefully people out there can find that.
Yeah.
Because that's the strongest thing is passion, inner drive, all that.
Yeah.
Then you superimpose on that top a logical brain, and hopefully it gets you where you want to go.
And we've seen very successful sales are usually heart and intuition centered, and they're running their business by allowing people to be amazing as well. And that is seen and felt when the buyers come into it. It also allows you that if the buyer is looking at just taking your company and trashing it and getting rid of your people, like that might not be a great fit for you either.
No,
you know? So
you don't want to screw a bunch of people and leave them behind. You don't want to, you can't, you don't always know, but I get the feeling like maybe I've talked too much again.
No, this was great. This is great. No, it's a long podcast. We might make it into 2 sessions, but we're going to have you back because
I hope
really enjoy talking to you. And I think it gives people a perspective of, we're not saying these things to sell you getting us involved. We're saying these things because this is what we've witnessed of the things that help you sell or help you grow. And I think continuing the discussion is going to be good. So we'll probably talk about some other things next time, but I appreciate you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.